everybody, Trevor here, and welcome back to another top 10 video. I was originally going to do my 40-second unboxing video next, but due to budgeting constraints, I decided to push it forward to sometime in February or so. So please excuse me for having a life. And to pass the time, I decided to make myself a top 10 video on Thomas stories that I wished were televised a long time ago. For this list, I'm mostly going to include stories from the Railway series, but I will also include stories from the annuals, magazines, and other Thomas books. In other words, no exclusions this time around. Oh, and please keep in mind that these are the types of stories I wanted to see the most in the TV series, so please forgive me if I didn't add your favorite ones on this list. Now without further ado, let's get chugging. Number 10. Certain stories from the magazines. The magazine series is a different canon from both the Railway series and TV series due to certain locations that couldn't be fit into the 2014 Sorus Island map, like Sydney's narrow gauge railway near Duck's Branch Line for instance. And there were also some stories that were adapted from the magazines to the TV series such as Thomas Percy and the Dragon, just to name one. However, there are certain stories about certain characters I think deserve to be televised in the first place, just so they can get some more publicity and recognition, not just from old school fans like me, but also from today's generation. For example, one of the characters with the most potential would have to be Angus the Fire Engine. If he were televised, then I think he should be one of the very first fire engines on Sora before Bell and Flynn's time. I also remember watching someone's fan-made episode where Angus was introduced to the Sorus search and rescue team, and Flynn couldn't help but admire him. I'll provide a link in the description below if you want to see that video for yourselves. Other characters I would also like to see are Old Bennett and Little Barford, not to be confused with the other Little Barford in real life. I think these characters are a lot more interesting and have more potential than most of the other magazine exclusive characters because of their unique looks and backstories. And like I've said in one of my older top 10 videos, we don't really need all the characters to be adapted to the television series because some of them have already been replaced. Examples include Victor the Old Blue 440 tank engine and Sydney the Blue narrow gauge tank engine because we already have certain characters who have those types of names and are a lot more interesting in my humble opinion. Oh, and another thing I love about the magazine stories is that they keep reusing old friends and foes frequently. For instance, we often get to see City of Churro, Diesel 261 aka Class 40, as well as the Horde lorries from Season 5, many of which have important roles in the magazine series. Man, if only we get to see these characters again in full CGI, then that would be excellent fan service. Number 9. Birdie Saves the Day aka Birdie to the Rescue. There are plenty of other annual stories by Christopher Audrey that I think deserve to be televised besides Thomas and Trevor from Season 2, but the one I think deserves the most publicity is Birdie Saves the Day, which introduces us to a new friend named Algie. In the original publication, Algie was originally yellow with a red stripe on his sides, while in a later publication, he was repainted blue with a different shape. Personally, I would love for this character to be televised because I don't want Birdie and Bulgy to be the only buses on Sodor, especially in the CGI series. Not much is known about Algie's persona other than that he teases his friend Birdie sometimes. Now, if he were televised, then I think he should be in his later blue incarnation because blue goes better with red. Otherwise, he would look too much like the colors of McDonald's. And those are the reasons why I think Birdie Saves the Day / Birdie to the Rescue deserves the number 9 spot. Coming at number 8 is Thomas-Saurus Rex. This is one of the many Thomas stories exclusive to the Random House publication library, and it's about Thomas and Stepney delivering a dinosaur fossil to the Timoth Museum. And in addition to that, we were introduced to a backstory where Stepney meets a very young Sir Topham Hatt and his grandfather known as Grandfather Hatt, who took a ride in his coal truck. I think this story should be televised for several reasons. For one thing, there is a wooden railway set based on this book. Secondly, it marks the return appearance of Stepney the Bluebell engine. And thirdly, in an audio narration provided by Keith Wickham, he voices all the characters including Stepney himself. And I personally think he did a pretty good job, though I would prefer Stepney to have a Cockney accent because if you think about it, Stepney was given a Cockney accent by Alec Baldwin in the US version of Season 5 because Stepney was named after a district in London, so I thought it would make more sense if Stepney had a Cockney accent rather than an elderly British accent, but that's just my opinion. Number 7. The Monster Under the Shed. This is also one of my favorite Random House Thomas books, and it starts off with James telling a scary ghost story about a little blue engine who got lost and found his way into an old abandoned shed where he encounters a spooky monster with creepy arms and fingers underneath it and chases after the little blue engine ever since that night. This gets Thomas nightmares, and later one night, he encounters something hairy and spooky coming to him in his shed, only to realize that it was just a harmless little hedgehog looking for a place to sleep, much to Thomas's relief. Personally, I think this story should be televised not only because of the unnamed blue engine, but also because of its interesting story and message about overcoming fear. And I bet some kids would love to see this story televised just for these reasons alone. Oh, and fun fact, there is a YouTuber who adapted this story to his YouTube channel and gave this unnamed blue engine a name called Hawin. He was also owned by Old Bailey the Fogman in that story. If you want to see that video for yourselves, I'll provide another link in the description below. Man, if only the Monster Under the Shed had its own merchandise just like Thomas-Saurus Rex, now that would be awesome. Number 6. The stories about Wilbert's the Forest Engine. This book was written by Christopher Awdry, and it stars an austerity saddle tank engine named after his father Wilbur Awdry. Formerly known as G.B. Keeling, Wilbur came from the Dean Forest Railway to help out Sir Topham Hatt on the Little Western Line due to Donald and Douglas being overworked back in 1993. It is here where Wilbur was introduced to Thomas, Percy, Toby, and many other old friends in the Railway series. One of my favorite chapters from this book would have to be Cab Over Wheels, where Wilbur tells the story about an engine named 16 who worked at the steelworks and was tired of going to the same place repeatedly, which is called the Tip, until one day he broke the rules by making the trucks pull him past the danger sign, where he fell cab over wheels down the slope. I remember when I first saw both Wilbur and 16 in the Ertl diecast forms back at Toys R Us, and my dad bought them for me, but I didn't know which non-televised stories they were from, and thanks to the internet, I learned about Wilbur, 16, and their history in the Railway series. Man, I do wish I have the new collection by Christopher Awdry. Now that would be cool. If Wilbur and 16 were televised, then it would give both characters more publicity and recognition, especially in the United States. I mean, after all, they are both cool characters. I also wish we would get to see the newer austerity engine that Sir Tom had wanted to purchase in the future, but unfortunately, it never happened. I've already talked more about this in my honest thoughts on Dropped Characters video, so I suggest you go and check that one out in the description below. Number 5. The Stories in Very Old Engines. This volume is about Skarloey and Rheneas in their early days on the Skarloey Railway. This is where we were introduced to Neil, a Scottish box-shaped tank engine who worked on the Southern Mainland Railway. When I first read this book as a kid, I've always wanted to have these 4 stories televised because it shows us the backstories and early years of both Skarloey and Rheneas, and how they used to be cabless before being modified so they don't bounce so much. I also thought it would have been awesome to see Neil in his model form, but it didn't happen because Bareillecroft wanted to make her own stories in Season 5, and wanted Season 4 to be the last season to feature the original Awdry stories. And in my own personal headcanon, instead of scrapping Neil like how he did in the original lore, he would be the only surviving member of the Southern Mainland Railway, and he would be part of the Earl's Railway Museum. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, after all, according to the CGI series, Glenn was the only surviving coffee pot on Sodor, so why not do the same with Neil? Coming at number 4 is Gordon Goes Foreign. This story was originally going to be adapted in Season 2, and it was going to feature Henry's reused model but with a brand new face mold, but was dropped due to budget cuts. But thankfully, we do get an honorable mention of the events of the story in Thomas and the Royal Engine, where Gordon complains about the name of London Station. When I was a kid, I was kind of confused by this story, but then I've learned that London has more than one station, some of which include King's Cross, Euston, Paddington, and Victoria. So now I know how Gordon feels about London Station and its many names. But still, I would love for this story to get televised, mainly because of the new character known as the Big City Engine, who had no official name. I even gave him a name Reginald in my own personal fan fiction because the name Patriot was already taken by EE93. Speaking of which, did you know that the Big City Engine was a name made up by Learning Curve back in 2002 when they still hold the rights to Wooden Railway? Learn something new every day, am I right? Number 3 are the Mountain Engine stories. Mountain Engines is one of my all-time favorite books from the Railway series. It was the only book to feature the Culdifell Mountain Railway and its engines. The reason for this is because, according to Christopher Audrey, due to the safety precautions and limited traffic, there are no more ideas for the location. However, I've put this as number 3 because ever since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to see these types of engines and rolling stock as part of the show. Though I guess it was due to the difficult filming of Season 4, particularly with the narrow gauge engines. If the Culdifell Railway engines were televised, then I think they should give each engine character a different color, but keep Culdy purple, just so that kids can easily tell them apart easily, just like what the Brillcroft Company did to the Skarloey Railway engines. And furthermore, the Culdifell Railway was mentioned in the TV series a few times in the past, including that old and outdated standard gauge versus narrow gauge video that promoted Blue Mountain Mystery. And those are the reasons why I think the Mountain Engines book should have been televised a long time ago. Number 2 are stories from Jock the New Engine. While I am grateful for Mike, Burt, and Rex to be televised into CGI thanks to Andrew Brenner and his team, I kind of wish they also added in the other Archdale Railway engines, including Jock and Frank, who were first introduced in Jock the New Engine physically by Christopher Audrey. Frank is a grumpy diesel engine who complained that he never got a chance to appear in the Small Railway Engines book, which caused him to back into a support beam at the back of the shed, which led him into deep trouble. But despite his bad attitude, he knows the importance of friendship and teamwork. Jock is the newest engine on the miniature railway. It was named that by Douglas for his yellow livery and was considered the strongest. If Jock and Frank had voice actors, then I think Frank should have a West Country accent just like the first 3 engines, and Jock can maybe have a Scotch accent or something. It's just a thought. Before I get to my number 1 pick, I just want to give some honorable mentions. Ballast. I decided to omit this one because I highly doubt that the Ballast Spreader, aka the Sorus Rex repair, would get televised due to having no name and personality. Drip Tank. I can understand why Brillcroft decided to drop this one in the first place, because she thought the term drip is an offensive and derogatory insult. And if this episode were made today, then chances are it could become banned from television, and I don't want any Thomas episodes to end up like certain Pokemon episodes in the past. Thomas and the Beanstalk. I was going to add this, but because Mattel already adapted it as part of a podcast series, I decided to drop it. The Missing Coach. This story was dropped by Brillcroft because she thought it would confuse the kids watching, so that's why I didn't make it to the list. The Complete Sorus Story Collection. I was going to put these on here, but I wanted to make room for more stories from the Railway series, which are more memorable and therefore the most important. And my number 1 choice goes to Super Rescue from Enterprising Engines. Out of all the non-televised stories, this one deserves a TV adaptation, not just because of the 2 new characters, Diesel 199 and Diesel 7101, but also because it's one of the best stories by the Reverend Wilbur Audrey himself. The Enterprising Engines book was published in 1968, the same year when steam was withdrawn from British Railway services. But thankfully, there are many railway enthusiasts out there who still kept many of these steam locomotives on display so that everyone can enjoy their experience with them. Also, this story takes place after the events of Tenders for Henry, which begs the question, why didn't they adapt Super Rescue in the first place? I mean, it's such a great story, and I think that Diesel 7101, now called Bear, is a great addition to the Northwestern Railway, and those are the biggest reasons why this story should have been televised a long time ago. Now let me know in the comment section below on which Thomas stories you think deserve to be televised. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? Next time, I'll do a top 10 ideas for Thomas characters, particularly for the original Thomas and Friends TV series, so stay tuned for that. This is Trevor Davis signing off, and I hope you all have a great day.